Good morning. My name is Joseph Citro, and I'm the chairman today for the meeting of the Livable Roadways Committee held on this day, Wednesday, April 27th. Can we please stand for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance. Thank you. Please be seated. Roll call, please.
Councilman Citro,
Here.
Cal Hardy,
Here.
Una Johnson,
Here.
Julie Ham and Mark Hudson are excused. Michael Marino,
Here.
Melissa Colazzo or Peter S. David Hay,
Here.
Emily Hinsdale,
Here.
Chris Thompson,
Here.
Larry Josephson,
Here.
Karen Kress,
Here.
Matt Lewis,
Here.
Scott Drainville or Bobby Edwards, Jason Jackman,
Here.
Catherine Coyle, Arizona Jenkins,
Here.
Carlos Ramirez,
Present online.
Sarah Hendricks,
Here.
Christina Steffen,
Here.
and Matt Pleasant is also excused. We do have an in-person quorum. Chair, would you mind calling for a consent for remote participation vote, please?
Do I have a motion for that? So moved. Who's that?
Marino.
Mr. Marino, second. Second by Mr. Hay. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone object? Is there anyone objecting online?
They're the ones that you're voting on.
Thank you. Well, still like to hear from them anyway. Let the record reflect that the motion carried unanimously. Do we have any public comments?
Yes. And let me see if he's online. Okay, so. It's first time I've run Wizard of Oz stuff while in the room, so it's more challenging.
While we are doing that, has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from our last meeting? If so, I have a motion to accept the minutes as written from our last meeting.
So moved. Second.
That was Mr. Marino and Mr. Hardy. Excuse me, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Anyone online opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Let me grab that off the printer. It's a little hard to read with them. Don't do cover comments. Okay, Mr. Ralph Greenlee submitted comments for the Highway 301 item that we're going to hear from later on the agenda. LCEA staff will be presenting that. So Ralph Greenlee is a 42-year resident of Sundance. He says, the community of Sundance spent 34 months providing input on the Little Manatee South Community Plan. It was adopted by the Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners in November 2010. Sorry, I ran to the printer. From our standpoint, the single most important problem for our community was that of transportation inside of the community and adjacent to the community. 18-wheelers and dump trucks treat our roads as a cut through to span 9.3 miles between Route 301 and Route 41. Closer to home, Route 301 has become a racetrack for any and all vehicles between Route 650, 674 and the Manatee County line. We are a rural civic association known to be an equestrian community. We have 9 acres, 40 stall area where residents can exercise and house their horses. When they transport their animals to a horse show and return to Route 301, they need to reduce their truck trailer speed to at least 15 miles per hour prior to turning onto Lightfoot Road. Cars, trucks approaching said combo from the rear don't always see this reduction in speed. The same is true for our boating residents and friends prior to getting to our marina on the Little Manatee River. The same is true from our DIY residents who need to use their utility trailers to take large dead trees to the transfer stations. Finally, the state park just 500 feet from the aforementioned turn point from Route 301 to Lightfoot Road brings an assortment of recreational vehicles to our community. The common theme here is that the turn lane is needed, not just for our residents, but for visitors of the area throughout the year. When you approve the widening of Route 301 for many different reasons, please provide a turn lane on Route 301 to Lightfoot Road. You will be securing the safety of 2,000 residents and hundreds of visitors for many years to come. Thank you in advance for your help with this very important area, the Sundance Homeowners Association. That concludes the public comment that's been submitted thus far.
Do we have Ms. Elizabeth Watkins with us?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Let me go ahead. Can you all see my screen and hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Excellent.
We're seeing, the split screen version. So we're seeing your notes,
Yeah.
just so you know.
Okay. You know what? I'm just gonna.
That's not a problem for us. I just wanted you to know.
Okay. Yeah. I have my desktop set up the other way, so I'm just gonna roll with that in the interest of time. I hope that that's not too distracting for everyone. But good morning. My name is Elizabeth Watkins, and I'm happy to be here today to present some information to the Livable Roadways Committee on the draft TPO membership apportionment plan. So a little bit of background on the apportionment plan. So essentially what the apportionment plan is it identifies the geographic planning area for the MPO, TPO, and the voting membership of that MPO. So the votes on the board. This is required because federal law requires that an MPO must be designated for any urbanized area that has over 50,000 in population. Additionally, state law requires that the apportioned members of a TPO board be reviewed after each decennial census. So this process has gone on, I think, for the past 40 years, and the last time that we took this, that the TPO did this was in 2013 in response to the 2010 census. So as different considerations were taken into account in thinking about what that apportioned membership should look like. So staff heard multiple considerations from the policy committee and others on that membership. The first of which was the importance of coordination and compliance with government and the sunshine. So as many of you know, often elected officials would need to meet with different agency representatives to talk about transportation investments or transportation policies. And because decisions like that could be voted on by the TPO board, those meetings would need to be publicly noticed and conducted in a manner consistent with the government and the sunshine law. It was for that reason about a decade ago that the state statute was updated to require that the Florida Department of Transportation serve in a non-voting technical advisory capacity to help the MPO and TPO boards make those decisions, but as well not have that conflict with government and the Sunshine Law. So they could talk about those transportation topics in another forum. Additionally, there were some concerns that potentially non-elected officials would be less accountable to residents. Staff wanted to look into that a little bit further, so we did an analysis of all the large MPOs across Florida, and we found that actually the Hillsborough MPO has the lowest percentage of elected official representation on that TPO board. At about 63% of the votes come from elected officials, while half of those large MPOs have 100% elected official representation, and 90% had at least 90% of the voting membership from elected officials. So Hillsborough is a bit of an outlier in that respect in terms of elected official representation in the vote. And the last main consideration was just population growth. As everybody knows, it is booming in Hillsborough County, and about 70% of the population resides in unincorporated Hillsborough County. So those three main considerations were used to develop 3 different membership scenarios. And those were brought to the policy committee about 2 months ago. One was to retain the voting membership of appointed officials and elected officials. The second option was to have elected officials as voting members. And then the third scenario was to have only elected officials from jurisdictional government, so just Hillsborough County, Tampa, Temple Terrace, and Plant City. The policy committee supported in a vote 5-1 to support that second scenario, which essentially entails TPO voting membership for elected officials, and all those appointed officials and staff would serve in a non-voting technical advisory role similar to FDOT District 7. Here's a slide to just quickly show you the percentage of the population breakdown with this proposed scenario, just as population. So the 4 jurisdictions and the school board isn't shown on here because they're not a jurisdictional government. But as I mentioned earlier, one of the other proposed changes was to increase the number of votes in unincorporated county to be a little bit closer to that population representation. Under this scenario, the Hillsborough County would have about 54% of the TPO vote, even though the entire area has about 70% for Hillsborough County. And it would remain the same for the other 3 jurisdictions, 3 votes for City of Tampa, and then 1 for Plant City and another for Temple Terrace. So this is a summary table of that proposed membership apportionment scenario. On your far right is the current voting representation, and on your left and highlighted is that proposed scenario. So as I discussed earlier, those appointed and staff positions would no longer serve in a voting capacity, but still a very important one of a non-voting technical advisor. And then the second major change was the increase for Hillsborough County from 5 votes to 7. So I'll pause here and see if there's any feedback or questions or comments.
Any comments or questions? Mr. Marino.
Thank you. In the packet, it has the comparison of percentages. Percentage of votes from elected officials. And I was looking at Broward, Miami-Dade, and Metro Plan Orlando specifically, because I feel like from the size of our county, those would be our closest competitors. They do not have 100% votes from elected officials. So I guess what my comment is that with this change that's being proposed, you're taking off, or there's the potential to take off, citizen representation. Right now, when you look at how the TPO is set up, you have a planning commission representative that is a citizen that's appointed by the members of the planning commission. And also in the past, there's been a representative of the Heart Board who is a citizen, not an elected official. I like the fact that it's an odd number. It would make votes much easier to have, making a majority out of 13 versus 12 or 14. So my comment would be that if you are to take off the airport, the Port Authority, that there should be a consideration to add back the planning commission seat, and planning commissioners are appointed by their individual jurisdictions. And also a Heart member that is a citizen, that is not an elected official. So then you have transit and, in theory, transit and land use represented by two citizens. Obviously, there will be some overlap between elected officials serving on these boards versus not. But that would be my one suggestion. And then you'd still have 15. If this is where the policy group and this is where the TPO is headed, it'd be not to stop that momentum, but that would be my one suggestion. Because then you still have citizen representation, and you still have an odd number, and citizens would be representing two entities that have been taken off in this proposal.
Let me go to Ms. Crest first. Ms. Crest.
Thank you for advancing that proposal.
Remember, we have to speak up towards the microphones for the recording work. Thank you.
I really just want to say, I think Michael presented a very reasoned compromise to this. I think that transportation and planning are pretty difficult subjects to really get your arms around and understand the big picture, and that might help temper kind of the politics of it as well. So I would fully support, I keep wanting to say Commissioner, Mr. Marino's proposal.
Arizona.
I was gonna do the same thing about, you have to do, you want to get the voice of the citizens. This building committee, you want to get those voices on board. I understand that you need individuals and all that. You also need the citizen voice. But that's what, that's just belonging and everything around what you need. You have to get everybody's voice. We have to be very sure that's why we have different people here. Yeah. People from the elected officials, people from our boards, we have people from the disability community, we have citizens on our boards. We want to make sure we get everybody's voice that we can. We can build a good board here.
Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Devon.
I agree with these sentiments. So I know that from Thea's position, we really support what Michael's saying here, and thank you, Karen, too, because I think we all agree with that from our standpoint.
Mr. Hay.
I just wanted to bring to the group that the comprehensive plan for Tampa, unincorporated county, in their intergovernmental coordination section, there's numerous policies that talk about coordination, improving coordination between Thea and HARD and these agencies with the MPO. So I'm not sure if this would further those comp plan policies.
Anyone else? Ms. Watkins, you've heard me say this morning, at the risk of sounding selfish, I first let me agree that Thea and Hart should be involved in this. However, I feel that there should be more representation from the city of Tampa on this. And I say this because our population fluctuates. It doubles from the hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. for the people coming from East Hillsborough County, South Hillsborough County, Polk, Pasco, Pinellas, and Manatee counties. Our transportation is more effective, than any other portion of Hillsborough County. We have two major highways intersecting in the middle of our downtown. I feel that there should be more representation for the city of Tampa. I was told that that's not the way it legally works, and there has to be more representation for Hillsborough County. I've stated my opinion. Yes, Mr.
I'm just echoing your sentiments. The collaboration between entities is vital here.
Mr. Moran.
Can I ask just a follow-up based on Councilman Citro's comments? The 7 proposed votes for Hillsborough County, is that to imply that all 7 county commissioners are now on the TPO?
That was the thought, yes.
So then, would that include someone from the county commission sits on THEA, is that right? And then,
I believe so.
There's at least one Hillsborough County Commission district that is, well, maybe it'll change with redistricting, but I believe there's at least one Hillsborough County Commission district that's entirely within the city of Tampa. I think the councilman's point is well taken that when you look at 7-3, that's a big gap. But I think that's part of my own philosophy with including a representative from the planning commission who is a citizen and a representative from Hart who is a citizen, because they may have the broader based philosophy of this is a very large county, we're a metropolitan region, we have to think that way rather than just I'm worried about the road in my neighborhood. So I don't necessarily have an issue with Tampa, that type of gap, because I feel like maybe that gap could be solved in part by having those 2 additional seats that would be coming from representatives of those 2 organizations that do have to think a lot about commute traffic and land use patterns that may be related to being the center of a large metropolitan region.
Arizona.
Does it mean that because we have hotline on board, what about the other traffic? We have sunshine line on board. We're gonna do the transportation when we have someone from each that hotline, the sunshine line, they do the whole county. Hotline does his. We get the one that does the whole county on board. We get like somebody from the sunshine line beyond the every good.
Elizabeth, if you didn't, you want me to repeat?
Yes, go.
Okay, sorry. Elizabeth, he was asking if Hart's not on here, does that mean then Sunshine Line and all of their other entities are not members? And I can show you by that little column here. The only ones that will be still on there as voting members are the county commissioners, the elected, for the 3 cities and the school board. All the others are just proposed to be advisory. So that's planning commission, THEA, Hart, airport, port, and DOT secretary.
We need to have sunshine line as a
Yes, Sunshine Line is usually represented by the Hart representative, and the Hart representative would be advisory versus voting in this proposal.
you do realize that difference.
So,
You realize that two different entities.
yes, 2 different entities.
And Mr. Marino, to that point, if someone sits, politicians will always take into consideration their constituents' issues. Having said that, if someone from Hillsborough County is a member of THEA or HART or maybe a multitude sitting on the board, then they have to decide on where they're going to go with their opinion.
Correct, yeah.
Someone from the city only wears one cap, and that's the city of Tampa. And that's why I say we're not getting the representation that we should, in my opinion, on the TPO board. Mr. Hay.
I had a question for Elizabeth. You had talked about the other counties that we looked at. I know Hillsborough's pretty unique with the size of the unincorporated county population. Do the other counties that you looked at have similar like ratios from municipalities to unincorporated?
So we didn't do that level of analysis, but I do know quite a few MPOs across the state do have those county boundaries for their planning areas. So I can go back and take a look at those breakdowns of the municipalities a little bit further. But my understanding for a lot of them, they follow that county boundary, but I'm not really sure about the representation of the municipalities.
My point would be that, since the unincorporated is so large in our area that, I mean, it seems to me that, and now I'm speaking as citizen, Dave, not politician, Dave, but just democratically creating one organization that basically has veto power over everything seems to be a little non-democratic, but that's just my non-planning citizen opinion.
Ms. Watt, can you put that former slide up there, please?
Does it show this one?
No, the one you had up there prior.
This one?
We can't see it. It's the comparison of percentages between the different TPOs.
Cell file.
Okay, the PDF. Yes, sorry about that. This one right here. The
Thank you. And this is one of the reasons why Port Authority should be on here. We put in 1 mile of 6 lanes to divert traffic from the port. We've got the second largest airport in the country. At least these two people should be on, in my opinion. But it seems like because they're unique to our county, to our area. And it just seems that those important voices are not going to be heard on the TPO. And again, it's just my opinion.
Well, and to your point, like, Metro Plan, I believe is 3 counties, but they have the Expressway Authority and they have the Aviation Authority. Miami-Dade has the Expressway Authority. I think those really should be the comparisons that we're looking at, with all due respect to the other counties represented. But like, from an economic perspective, you compete with Orlando and Miami. And to the point that was made about elected official percentages, like, those don't have 100%. Those are the few that don't have 100%. I guess my question for you, sir, would be, to your point about like the city of Tampa and David's point about it's 7-6 in terms of the county versus the municipalities. Like, how would we balance that out if the desire is to replace the CEOs and take off their votes? Because that's really, it seems like where this has gone, is that to have a board of elected officials, the only way to do it is by population. And the city of Tampa is 1/3 the size of the county in terms of population.
And again, that population changes every day. So again, in my opinion, we should not look at population, but where the population goes. If the population were to stay in Hillsborough County, unincorporated Hillsborough County, then I would be fine with this proposal. That would be wonderful. But unincorporated Hillsborough County comes into Tampa every day to work. And again, I'm sounding it like this is very personal, but they're coming in using these roads and then they're going back home. and the population that lives in the city of Tampa is affected more by the people that use the roads. And again, that's just my opinion. I'm sorry, Ms. Crest, one more thing. We talked about toll roads going through our downtown. Who do those affect more? Do those affect the travelers, or do those affect the people living along the side of the highways? Ms. Crest?
Yeah, excellent points. Are we required to change the makeup of this for some reason?
I think today what we're asking is for an opinion to give to TPO.
It's action. Elizabeth, you want to tell them a little bit about why we're addressing this?
Yeah, so it just required that it be evaluated every 10 years. So this is one scenario that the policy committee supported, but taking feedback from all the committees, and we'll share that back to the board, but there's no requirement that the apportioned membership change. It just needs to be evaluated every 10 years.
It was evaluated, one committee's weighed in, and they've also weighed in and said, please take it, now that you've got a draft, take it to all the other advisory committees for feedback. So it's important to get your feedback in the form of a motion today, not just lots of different discussions, so, because it is an action item. Do you support it, not support it, or edit it, however?
Well,
Ms. Crest?
I'll make a motion if there's no more discussion that we basically leave it as it is,
Status quo?
status quo. I mean, I'm open to others' opinions on it, but
I would second that.
We have a motion made by Karen Crest to leave this status quo as the board makeup, seconded by Ms. Hendricks. Is there any discussion?
Okay, you heard Hendricks, I heard Arizona, okay. Let me just-
I'm sorry,
That's
Arizona.
fine.
Did you second it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Either one.
Seconded by Arizona. Any discussion?
I just have a question.
Sure, please.
The way the technical, I don't know if, Ms. Watkins, if you could pull up the existing TPO membership.
It's the
Yes,
status quo.
yes, but on here, it's the individual CEOs, but at least in the case of
Oh,
Hart and the Plan Commission, that doesn't necessarily have to be the CEO or the executive director. Is that correct?
Just that position is represented, and I think in the bylaws
So we really should be looking at this as the airport, Port, Hart, and Plan Commission representatives, not necessarily the CEOs. Is that, can we say that? Okay. I just want to make that clarification because I think
that's a good
both
point.
that bolsters the argument for keeping the status quo.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, yes, who was that?
Sorry, this is Matt Lewis online. I'm looking at it, I'm hearing a lot of discussion about a governance issue and not seeing really a nexus to livable roadways. So I'm in a unique position being a staff member representing Hillsborough County, theoretically on issues relating to the livability of our roadways, and voting on a governance issue without a Hillsborough County directive on governance, which is neither here nor there, but that's a long way of saying I think I'm going to abstain from this vote, given that it has, from what I see, more governance relationships than livable roadways relationships.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Yes, Mr. Josephson.
Also being a staff member of Hillsborough County, I'm going to abstain from the vote also.
Anyone else?
Question. The directive that we're given under, because I remember years ago, I abstained on a vote. And I was told that being on this, you have to somehow show that the clear conflict of interest in the vote. Is that language that existed a couple of years ago still?
right, but they're, as I understand the email that was sent to me as a liaison prior to this item coming before them, their staff representing a government entity that has not provided them direction on how to, because they represent that. as do you planning commission. So they're not claiming a conflict. They are unaware of the direction their government has provided. They haven't had a chance to have their government tell them their position yet.
I would think that would apply to.
Versus a conflict like I'm a developer and I can't vote on this because I'm also taking it through approval process.
Right, but we're all, a lot of us are representatives of particular entities on this list. The question is, do we, because we, as a planning commission employee, I do not have direction from the commission on where the commission is feeling on this. So I may have to abstain as well, based on if we're following that logic.
As I understand it, you do have that right today.
And how does that affect does that affect in any way quorum or anything like that? Like, because if everybody abstains?
No, well, so far we've got 3, so no, we still have 9 voting members available.
All right, so that would be, if we had 4, that would be 5.
No, because we voted to allow the virtual people to participate as well, so we have more than those present in the room.
Who do we have online?
Yeah, we may have to take a roll call vote, to make sure we have enough.
Any other discussion? Again, we have a motion on the floor by Ms. Kraft, seconded by Mr. Jenkins. Roll call vote.
Gail, can you provide that?
Councilman Citro,
Yes.
Cal Hardy,
I would abstain, I guess.
Una Johnson,
Yes.
Michael Marino,
Yes.
David Hay,
Abstain.
Emily Hinsdale,
Yes.
Chris Thompson,
Abstain.
Larry Josephson,
Abstain.
Karen Kress,
Yes.
Matt Lewis,
Abstain.
Jason Jackman,
Yes.
Arizona Jenkins,
Yeah.
Carlos Ramirez,
Yes.
Sarah Hendricks,
Yes.
Christina Steffen,
I'll abstain with the clarification so there's no conflict of interest.
and the motion passes 9-0 with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 abstentions.
I thank everyone for that healthy discussion. It shows a lot from this board that we can be members of this board, that we can agree, we can disagree, we can think differently. So thank you all very much for that healthy discussion. Ms. Moccasin, thank you very much.
Thank
for
you.
watching. Next is, who we got? Davida Franklin.
You're muted, Davida, and I'm not seeing your screen yet.
All right, now can you hear my good morning?
Okay, we're hearing you, but we're not seeing your screen as presenter yet.
Okay, because I have not clicked that button yet. So I just wanted to show up and say good morning. Thank you. I'm Davida Franklin, the Community Relations Coordinator for the TPO, and I'm going to present to you the Measures of Effectiveness report as part of our Public Participation Plan. Okay. Do you still see me or do you see a screen?
We see your screen.
Yeah, you're not in presenter mode, but that's fine.
Okay, how's that?
That's a little better. You're good.
Okay. All right. So for this report, we're looking at public participation and I'm sorry?
No, please proceed.
Okay, thank you. So we're looking at public participation, and that's important because it provides opportunities for involvement of the public, inclusivity, and it also requires for the TPO to be responsive, creative, and flexible while maximizing exposure. And so this report evaluates the way that we engage the public. It recommends improvements, and also it shows that we do have a genuine interest in how we engage with the public and the input that we receive. So the 4 categories that we're going to take a look at are visibility and productivity, participation opportunities, public interest and feedback, as well as input results. So I'm just going to give you some examples from the report. But feel free to dive in and definitely share any questions or concerns that you may have after I go through these areas of the report. So for visibility and productivity, a few examples of how we've been quite visible are through our newsletters and meeting packets and published reports. So that figure there, 2,097, that's actually from the time that we started putting these reports online up until 2021, that's how many we've had. Same thing for the brochures, maps, and flyers that we've produced. So the ones that we've either distributed online or in print, we've actually amassed 24,900 of those. And then we've had 1,232 newsletter articles. And then you also see our YouTube views there, which are growing because we have all of our committees and the board on our YouTube channels, our YouTube channel. And here are 2 great examples of how we participated and engaged the public. So there we have Beth Alden, and we were quite visible. As you know, she's our executive director. We were quite visible during the COVID restrictions from the pandemic, where we had to basically hold of all of our public engagements and meetings virtually, and then we switched over to hybrid. So that was a great test of our strength and our willingness to be innovative, and we definitely answered that call and brought ourselves to the public virtually for that time. And again, we continue to do that. And then also for the 2021 non-discrimination and equity plan outreach, we went out door to door to let people know in different environmental justice areas about the ways that they can have a say and a voice in how we gauge whether or not we should be able to equip them more, equip other areas, and also make sure that they have avenues to give us input. So it was a great experience to go out to those areas, as well as reaching out to different homeowner associations and community groups. And it was a great example of how we were able to reach out. And so again, that made us quite visible in the community. Now we look at participation opportunities, and this is just a sample of one way we do that, which is looking at everyone that has attended board and committee meetings in 2020 and 2021. And so I'm going to just sum it up in this slide here, which is that we had 3,916 participants at these meetings in those 2 years, as well as 56 speakers. 940 folks received email agendas, and we actually either hosted or participated in events in environmental justice areas. And in this case, 20% of the events that we either hosted or participated in were in those areas. So for public interest and feedback, so here are 4 great examples of how we engaged with the public. So again, I spoke to you about the non-discrimination and equity plan, those door-to-door canvassing, reaching out to community groups, as well as even holding a storytelling forum. We were able to get those folks involved and to get their feedback on how we were doing and what they would want to see in terms of our outreach to underserved communities. And then the Sheldon Road Corridor technical study, that looked at the high injury network, and we really got the community involved in giving us feedback on what they want to see on these 8 corridors that were involved in that study. And then the annual evaluation of the community transportation coordinator, we received over 1,300 surveys from the public within the 2 evaluation years. And then finally, we have the Transportation Improvement Program, or as you know, the TIP. And we had a great amount of interest from the public. And we continue to have a great amount of interest when we held the hearings in 2020 and 2021. And that feedback that we receive is actually analyzed, and then we put it into a report, and then that helps guide some of the recommendations that the board makes. So again, focusing on public input, and in this case, these are two studies that we did that really demonstrated how our recommendations in our studies are driven by the public. So for the Plant City transit feasibility study, members of the public preferred the map that you see on the left, and as a result, the TPO recommended that Hart and the city of Plant City and Plant City should work together to conduct another study to look further into this option that the public wanted, and also to identify a funding source for a circulator. And then on the right, we have the Safe Access to Parks pilot study, and that actually covered 3 different park locations. It was headed up by Lisa Silva, and it had some great responses from the public in terms of just some safety improvements that they wanted to see, wider bike paths, some additional safety paint to delineate between when a bike path ends and when a road or sidewalk begins. And there were some other recommendations as well. Again, those recommendations were driven by public input. And I just wanted to just show you a few photos here of just some of the success that we've had in engaging the community. So in the upper left-hand corner, those are kids from the Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association, again, along with Lisa Silva. So she was out there helping them undertake a beautification project. And then we also have the Morning of Remembrance, which was a walk of silence that we hold every year. That's the picture on the right there. And that was in 2021. We had walked in New Tampa along Bruce B. Downs to honor the victims of traffic violence. And we have the lower left, that's the Garden Steps project. So that's the 22nd Street Healthy Garden project. And we also have the Gulf Coast Safe Streets Summit. So all of these, and these are just a few of the opportunities that we've had to engage with the public, where they've been able to let us know what it is that they'd like to see in terms of our studies and projects and our products. So for our input results, well, let's take a look first at the 2020 report recommendations. So those recommendations were to increase citizen engagement in the environmental justice areas, to use short videos to inform, to be flexible in our public plan requirements, and to seek feedback on public engagement strategies. So I have this little grid here that shows what the recommendations were and success that we had in meeting those. So if you look at the top line, to better engage environmental justice areas, well, you have the non-discrimination and equity plan update, as well as the FLIP Junior Ambassadors Program. That's the photo of the kids I just showed you in a previous slide. And then also create short videos. Well, we had sponsored 83 Degrees to produce some videos for us to help simplify some of the planning process, as well as we produced in-house the 1 Minute Matters video shorts that also dives a little bit further into community planning. In this particular situation, it would be transportation-oriented development. And then you see on the next line, be more flexible. Well, we had our virtual engagement that eventually turned into hybrid engagement as we adjusted how we were able to meet the demands of, or the challenges of operating in the pandemic, and then the aftermath of being able to accommodate folks who maybe can't get out to our meetings as much as we would like or as they would like. And so now we have this hybrid engagement. And then one recommendation from 2020 was to get more feedback. And we definitely did that with our Transportation Improvement Program Amendment pilot. So as you may know, we have amendments that come out throughout the year for the Transportation Improvement Program. And what we've been doing is planting out road signs, making social media posts, and creating a designated web page, as well as either releasing a press release or a newsletter article to reach more people. And that was successful. We were able to get a few dozen comments on our Transportation Improvement Program amendments as a result of that pilot. So those were the recommendations that were from 2020, and those were also what we did to meet those recommendations. Now we have recommendations for 2022. And here they are. So the first one is to increase digital and social media tools to increase engagement. So we really need to look at trying to get more exposure on Nextdoor. We already are on there, but we're going to go further and make sure that we are posting more information on there. And then we need to get TikTok, and so the city does a great job on there. We can do a great job too, and reach some of the younger generations that are engaging on TikTok. And then this here, we want to hear from you. That's actually one of the flyers that we used for the Transportation Improvement Program amendments. And so because we already took those steps and we saw it was successful, now we should make that a formal practice and add it to our public participation plan and take it out of that pilot stage. And then we can provide more clarity about the TPO's roles and our role and responsibilities in the transportation planning process just by putting out a bit more video-oriented social media posts, cute and quirky stuff. And again, some of that stuff can also go on TikTok. So that's something that we will do in the upcoming 2-year period. And also use focus groups more. So we saw the success of that in the non-discrimination and equity plan update. And so now we can take that same practice and apply it to all of our studies and projects. And then the final one, build a culture of awareness. So if you look at this photo, everyone's high-fiving, and it's not that they're high-fiving because they all agree. And so I did hear the chair say something to the effect of, it's great that we can get together and still come to a consensus, even when we have different points of views. Well, that would be in the case of the TPO, and that's the vision here, which is that it's not necessarily that we'll get everybody to get on our side, but we definitely want to make them aware of the work that we do and the options that they have to give us input and just get them more engaged. Just create a culture of folks who want to give us the information in terms of how they feel about transportation planning. And again, it doesn't always have to look rosy, but it should be something where people are aware and invigorated to give public input. And that is your presentation. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Franklin. Any comments, questions?
Today, you made any more conversation from that part of the plan and the sunshine of what they close at 4 o'clock. So what those people that live in places, how they can
My understanding is commenting on the limited service areas of Hart and considering that.
Because plenty, do they have any transportation?
No, Plant City does not have transit. They have opted not to contribute to Hart, and so they do not currently have Hart service.
They have something?
That I don't know.
Any other comments or questions? Ms. Franklin, thank you very, very much for your wonderful report.
This is an action item, so the draft recommendations to be recommended to the TPO board for consideration.
Do I have a motion?
So I move that we approve the public participation plan measures effectiveness report and forward to the TPO.
We have a motion made by Mrs. Moreno. Any second? Thank you very much.
Is that you now?
Yes.
Okay.
Second by Ms. Hudson. All in favor, say aye.
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 Yes, sir. Was that you, Mr. Lewis? Is there any objection? Let record reflect that the motion passed unanimously. Ms. Yang.
Hi, everyone. I hope it's okay to join you in person. It's really nice to see everyone finally after about 2 years, since I've been voting.
Nice to see you too.
Can you hear me if I stand at this podium? Can you hear me okay?
Gail, can you tell us whether you can hear?
It's just I can see better from here than, can you hear me?
No problem at all.
Okay, great. So, hi, everyone. I'm Allison Ye. I'm also one of the TPO staff members. And the review you have in front of you today is for US 301. It's a short segment from Moccasin, Wallow to State Route 674. And it's what's called the ETDL review. So you get these once in a while, but I thought I'd repeat the slide to let you know that it stands for efficient transportation.
Sorry,
Sorry.
I'm trying to run the thing at the same time.
So it's a DOT process basically for environmental reviews. So it stands for Efficient Transportation Decision-Making Process, or ETDM. So it's DOT's way of putting their projects through a review process before it gets further down the pipeline. So we're in the second diamond right now, that programming stream for this project. And basically, these reviews go out. There's a list of like 40 reviewers, everyone from Fish and Wildlife to local governments to tribal governments, and the TPO is one of the reviewers. So we always come to this committee to seek expertise on transportation issues with these reviews. Next one, please. Okay, I have a summary presentation from the Department of Transportation that summarizes the very long 31-page packet information. So not everything in the review refers to us. So TPO typically comments on social and cultural considerations, like we look at mobility, the economic development, the trails, what the traffic is like, but we are allowed to comment on any aspect. So you'll see that we also have some comments about the environmental aspects of the project. Next, please. So this project is actually in Manatee and Hillsborough County. It's to widen US 301, which is an undivided 2-lane rural highway right now, to 4. So go from Moccasin, Wallow in Manatee County about 1.5 miles to Hillsborough County at 674. Next, please. I'm going to try not to read every slide to you, but I can provide these to you, and it's also in the packet. So DOT states that the purpose of the project is there's safety issues on 301. It is a hurricane evacuation route and quite an important north-south freight corridor that runs through the center of Florida and provides access to the eastern seaboard. And also they identified that in Manatee County that there's going to be capacity issues by 2045 if they don't do the widening. Slide, please. Okay, so in Manatee County, the level service is F, is going to be F if they don't do anything. And they also noted something that's a little bit pressing for Hillsborough County, is that the crash rate there is 8.28 and well above the state average of 2.88 for this type of facility. And of the fatalities that were in the corridor, 6 of those in Hillsborough County were head-on crashes. Next, please. There is also a tremendous amount of development happening here surrounding the corridor. So you see the Vista Palm, South Shore, Cypress Ridge. So they feel like this is additional pressure to increase the capacity for this road. Next, please. Try to stay on schedule. I know we're probably behind. The land use in this corridor is primarily residential low density. There's some natural hardwood and coniferous mixed plants, cropland and pasture land, streams and swamps, and a small amount, just under 7% of residential high density, meaning 6 acres, 6 units or more per dwelling acre. The future land use looks to be residential mixed use and conservation for this area. Next, please. From the economic standpoint, they bring up again the population pressure. So Manatee County 37% increase and Hillsborough 32% increase projected by 2045, which is actually the timeline for our long-range transportation plan. And right now along these corridors, along 301, there's no bike lanes that are designated. There are bike lanes on 674 in front of the development of El Lago Hillsborough County, and then in Moccasin, Wallow, there's some bike lanes as well. So widening will bring safety improvements for the bike lanes as well. Next, please. The households in this area, just under 700 people, 10% below the poverty line. Overall, 30% minority and 26% Hispanic, Latino, some limited English proficiency populations, a few social resources, youth camp, religious centers, charter schools. Number of farmlands, croplands, and pasture land. A little bit of urbanized area only in Hillsborough County, and the rest for the two counties is in the non-urbanized area. 3 archaeological sites were identified, a couple of bridges that were constructed and reconstructed, and a number of structures built between 1970 and 1980 were identified as well. These reports, not all the information is specifically for transportation review, but it's comprehensive what they provide. So next, please. A lot of recreational area, obviously, and protected lands here, and some opportunities for multi-use trails opportunities. So they do mention the South Coast Greenway corridor and paddling opportunities and trail opportunities. This is just to show that there is a large number of wetlands in the area of different types. There's also floodplain. Some of this is in the 100-year floodplain, and there are 6 water bodies identified. And a few water bodies, these 3 mentioned here, Cockroach Bay, Little Manatee River, and Little Manatee River State Recreation. They're designated as outstanding Florida waters, which means they have some special attributes that give them that designation, and so the water quality is protected in this area. So that's why they're called outstanding Florida. We've talked about wildlife corridors in the past here, and they did identify wood stork, grasshopper sparrows, scrub jays, some imperiled fish, and some insects as well in the area. Okay, next please. This is usually not what we comment on, but those red dots you see are underground leaking storage tanks, I think, that are under observation right now in the area. And they did note that there's public water supply plants in the area, power transmission lines that should be considered. Next. Finally, the noise was evaluated for this corridor as well, and it's found to be minimal. They also identified that part of the road will go over the Little Manatee River, so they'll need to look at building or redoing a bridge or having a parallel bridge. Next. I've kind of given you these facts already, but I wanted you to know that a lot of what we're looking at is consistent with the work that the TPO is doing. So we are always keeping the Vision Zero action plan and speed management plan in mind. We look at everything with respect to our non-discrimination plan, as well as our air quality monitoring work and resiliency. But the facts, I'm not going to go over them because I just presented them to you. Next, please. So one of the strengths of being with the Planning Commission and the TPO together is we have transportation and land use expertise. So we always run these reviews by David's team and Sean's team. And can we go back one slide? Yeah, there you go. Okay, so we looked at this in terms of the Hillsborough comprehensive plan for the unincorporated county, and there's a ton of policies related to wetlands, floodplains, rivers, and habitat conservation. And I'm going to provide all these policies you see to the DOT in whole, but I thought maybe you didn't want to see them all. So I have a summary statement for you. Generally, they feel from the environmental sustainability standpoint that this development may negatively impact the surrounding environment, could cause fragmentation and natural linkages, so making it hard for wildlife to go east and west, some impact on native species and habitat loss in the area. Also, another concern that was brought up was that, widening always means more stormwater runoff, and that will go to the local waterways and carry just more debris and pollutants into the water, and that will just ultimately create the water quality. So it's encouraged that, green infrastructure and low impact techniques be recommended or addressed or looked at, just to address the runoff. Next, please. We also, thank you, David, to your team, looked at the future land use element. The future land use element supports recognition preservation of archaeological sites, and there were 3 identified in the project. Probably an even more important point with respect to the plan is that this corridor traverses through some community plan areas, South Shore, Little Manatee South, Waimama, and Greater Sun City. So the South Shore plan, it's in the what we call the livable communities element or section, and all the community plans are in there. The South Shore plan covers kind of the entire area in South Shore, and they have kind of a goal that to promote integrated approach to planning. They want to emphasize natural environment and preservation and multimodal where they can. So they mentioned that they had not contemplated widening 301 as a way to help the community, but they did look at, 674 and between 75 and Westlake Drive, Sun City, Waimama, Ruskin area. But I guess the reviewer thought that this project might actually help the area create more balanced system because they're cognizant of accommodating vehicles, but also having a balanced system that supports activity centers and make sure that public transit is connected. And if there's any future rapid transit in that area, that would be included as well. That kind of concludes my quick review of the project. But before we go on to any comments you have, Lisa received a citizen comment from someone who lives in the area. We'd like to read it to record for your consideration as well.
I read it into the record during public comment.
Oh,
at
you
the
did?
beginning.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well then,
So they were all heard it earlier.
so what I'd like to do is get your feedback if you have any, or you can even give it to Lisa a few more days before I send it next week to the DOT. And if you could comment, come to an agreement as a committee about what you'd like to forward to the Department of Transportation.
I think we would take comments, questions. Mr. Hager.
I mean, sticking with our mission kind of for our group here, I would think we would want to make it clear that, improvements there are sensitive to the environment, which was already listed, but that it's truly multimodal and that they continue that large, not greenway, but there's an existing multi-use trail to the north on 301. That should continue down so that people could have access to Little Manatee South, Little Manatee State Park, I would think would be, and potentially Manatee County. I think that would be a good recommendation for our group.
They do kind of allude to this Hollywood Trail connectivity, but I'm not sure the details have been worked out.
And Allison, can you just give a brief, I know this is very early in the process, what typically occurs, after this?
So all the agencies like us, the 40 somebody mentioned, we submit our reviews. And Lisa, can you go back to the very first slide?
And they're mine.
So then I think within that 40 by 60 days, the state submits their review. So this is a PD&E project, right? So they're not going to get to the project development yet. So we're in that second green diamond, and then it will proceed through project development. Now, I will say that in the past, we have brought up issues and they compile a summary report. They consider that along with their, their design, their final project. If there's one topic that we're really interested in highlighting, we can elevate that in our review, and then we can have another consultation on top of that. So I know wildlife quarters have come up quite a bit here, and that's something we can talk about. That's just a suggestion. But I would have to elevate it in the review to the critical topic.
Just my opinion, I would think, as it gets closer to design and things like that, that it comes back so we actually see what they're proposing and they can get feedback from this group, as in, when they have more details of what actual lane widths are and what they're actually proposing out there.
Okay.
And-
Sometimes we provide comments that I don't think get through the process.
So I can request a DOT come back with a project update when they get closer to actual end of development and closer to design.
I know that would be.
With- Yeah, David was not present last month, but we had that with Highway 301 North,
Yeah.
Where we had commented on it in 2015. And then, yes, because we had, I brought it through committee. So
Yeah.
that's great.
Just to let you know, these, everyone has access to the public ETDL portal. So if this project goes in, and not just ours, but every comment from every agency will go into the final report. You can just look it up, the final report. But I can, but you're right, sometimes, we don't care about it.
Mr. Moreno.
Thank you. On the attachment, the study, the P&E study, there's a section on crash types. And it's rear end, left turn, rollover, and then other, and then off-road. What would be, I guess an other would be, vehicle type of crash, but what would off-road be?
I might have to research that for you off-road. Do you know offhand, Lisa, from the?
Yes, when they
Yeah, like a lane departure.
Okay, so it wouldn't be someone off the road was hit? Like, it wouldn't be like a pedestrian?
No, peg crashes would be under peg crashes.
Okay.
And then it could be either single vehicle or lane departures.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
And it's not ATVs.
Yeah, that, I figured that. I figured that part, yeah.
I think the main safety improvement is.
Excuse me.
Yes?
Off the road means a lot of the times that the vehicle left the roadway, and that's what it means for unknown reason at the time that the vehicle left the roadway. And it could have been that they hit a tree, that they hit another object off the roadway. That's what it means.
So,
Hey, guy, would you just please state your name for the record?
It's Ginger Regalado. I'm the pedestrian and bicycle program manager for the Department of Transportation.
Thank you, Ms. Marino.
yeah, can I ask a follow-up? So if there were to be any sort of pedestrian or bicycle incident, where would that fall? In this report, would that be included in this report?
Yes, crashes could have multiple impacts. It can be a bicycle and pedestrian crash that's off the roadway, but you would have it where it's categorized automatically with a bicycle and pedestrian, and it would automatically come up that way. But if it's off the roadway, that means that they traveled off the roadway, and you would see if they had hit a bicycle or a pedestrian. It would still come up that way.
So in the safety section here, and I guess it's page 9, it doesn't mention any sort of if there is a pedestrian or bicyclist incident. So would that seem to say that this is really, the safety issues really have more to do with vehicles than say the safety of pedestrians who might be coming out of one of those housing developments?
I don't have that report in front of me, so I can't speak to it in particular, but in general, if there has been an interaction with a vehicle, with a pedestrian or a bicyclist, it would denote that. Like on my presentation that I'm about to give, you'll see that information.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Given the rural context, I'm not surprised that's what's reported thus far. There are sidewalks and drainage, very rural.
I know it came up when we discussed in the 301 portion between, like New Tampa and Pasco, and now we're going the opposite direction, so I don't know if there would be the same conflicts from Sun City Center to Manatee.
Any other comments? Mr. Hay?
I just had a question. When we're looking at widening the road under this scenario, how does the induced demand of the widening researched by FDOT? How do they, I would assume the widening of the road is making it easier for the people in Manatee County to get up here. But then how many more cars are we gonna create beyond what we would if we left the roadway the way it was? Does anyone look at that?
That's not addressed in the report. The the purpose is that they're really looking at 2045 population projections of and the level of service that's going to be.
So FDOT doesn't look at induced demand when widening roadways?
I probably have to talk to FDOT a little
Just
more.
curious.
Right now, they're referencing level of service.
Right. They're saying it's a failing facility.
Based on modeling.
Right.
Right, yeah, okay.
And it will probably fail again sometime in the future.
By 2025.
Yeah, because after the widening.
Right, yeah.
Mr. Hardy.
Just one question. The widening that they're proposing, FDOT's proposing, is there any portion of that with median to restrict the left turn crashes or to,
You mean, is there like the Michigan U-turns?
no, what I mean is with the other portion of 301, when we recently had another presentation. So one of the things that was discussed in the presentation, but I don't think was kind of brought up, it wasn't elaborated on well enough in that presentation, was a portion of the widening that they were proposing was because there's major safety concerns with two-lane undivided road. So, and I wanted to see if this was a portion of this was of the widening was to reduce that left turn and hit-on crashes or anything like that, or is it all just capacity based?
They did mention head-on crashes. I think this was slide.
Well, here we are in the process.
Right.
So if I may, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So this is very early on. They have not designed or proposed things. They're getting very early on comments, and then they go into project development, and then they come into design. So the other one had been through all these steps and was in design and came back through, so we had those details. It's too premature.
But I think we can enter that in the comments as something we want for consideration.
For consideration, I would say with widening that it would be, if they're going to widen, that they add a median in order to make sure that they restrict any kind of left turn or ankle crashes.
Let's divide it.
Besides safety.
Yeah,
It is divided?
it's
I'm sorry.
divided. Yeah.
Okay,
So
then that's.
that's why I wasn't sure if you meant in addition to the
No.
divided. Okay.
Then I missed that in the
All right.
presentation, I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. I probably didn't emphasize it enough.
Ms. Jensen.
You kind of alluded to the wildlife corridor discussion, and that's something I'm concerned with, especially with the increase of population in this area, probably reduced farmland and wetlands that already exist, and you have two, state parks and riverine systems will handle a lot more pressure and a lot more wildlife population. That's putting more pressure on all these kind of crossings along the Little Manatee River. And instead of just, a small bridge going over the water body itself, it might be worthwhile to think about, a wildlife crossing as well, not just for the riverine system itself, but to consider something more.
Mr. Hay.
Oh, sorry. Just so then the whole group knows, the vast majority of the site is within the rural area. It falls outside of the urban service area. So the long-term vision of this, the majority of the area, except for you showed those two developments in that, is to remain rural in character. So don't think that, the whole 301 corridor is envisioned for suburban development.
And the more residential, Manatee is even more rural than we are. So urban service area is just really in Hillsborough County.
Right.
Area. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
It gets suburban on the
I think that further supports her.
Manatee County.
This is still rural service.
South too,
Right.
but it's not planned to be suburban in character.
Mixed use, right, Bill? Some mixed use. Yeah.
Limited mixed use on the east side of 301 north of Hillsborough River State Park, but that has restrictions on that if you do develop a suburban character, that it's more in a clustered village approach and not the typical suburban that you see here.
Any other comments? Any other comments or recommendations that we would like to make? Jay, can you take all those comments and recommendations?
I wrote them down, but Do you all agree on all the comments that come through? I guess we need a.
So is it safe to say that you you support the ones she presented and then you added some additional and?
Right.
Correct.
So I can add those all in to the report if you're all agree.
Anybody like to make a motion? Because yes, we like what Ms. Hayes said, and we've made our recommendations, and to give those recommendations to TPO. Motion made by Mr. Jenkins. We have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hardy. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Somebody said something.
That was Matt. Matt, that was you that said aye?
Okay.
Let the record
Yes,
reflect.
it was. Thank you.
Motion passed unanimously.
Well, thank you.
I want to thank you for mentioning the Masonic Youth Camp. If no one has ever in this room visited there, please do so. It is a great camp with lots of activities, kayaking, canoeing, and it's just wonderful. Unknown treasure there. Thank you.
So I will see you next month with another one. Thanks.
Thank you.
Now we have 2 brief presentations and 2 updates left and then half an hour. So please be concise, everybody.
Ginger, you're up.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Ginger Regalado. I am the Bicycle and Pedestrian Program Manager for the Department of Transportation, and I am getting a slow network connection message, so I'm going to have to turn off my webcam. I do apologize for that. Okay, so as you can see, the vulnerable road users, and for us, our vulnerable road users, for anybody that does not know, are our bicyclists, pedestrians, and motorcyclists, represent approximately 45% of all fatalities in District 7. And unfortunately, these numbers have increased in Hillsborough County during 2019 through 2021, with Hillsborough representing 43% of the vulnerable road users in our fatalities. The numbers are going up instead of down, which is not something that we want to see. Next slide. So what other challenges are we seeing? Well, similarly in Hillsborough County, a large number of our incapacitating injuries with 33%, and numbers are still increasing during 2019 through 2021 by 36%. And you all know that this is during the time of COVID, when you would think that the numbers would be going down since people were generally staying at home and working from home. But unfortunately, we only saw them rising. Next slide. Hillsborough County represents the top 10 across the board on our safety matrix for every category, and hits really in the top 5 for most categories. Number 1 for impaired driving, which is definitely not something we want to see. And number 2 for occupant protection. And unfortunately, there's a rise in people not wearing their seat belts, which is something that we really can't explain. And it's unfortunate because that is something that could definitely save lives, and it's a simple act that everybody should know that they need to be doing. This safety matrix right here determines how people can get their grants and their sub-grants, especially for our law enforcement officers. And Hillsborough County is in the top 25% of all Florida counties for fatalities and serious injuries for these emphasis areas. Next slide. Local roads, unfortunately, in Hillsborough County represent where most of the crashes are. Our state roads are not far behind, as you can see. It's really not something that we want to do or see on through these presentations. We're all working together to adjust people's behaviors, I guess would be the best terminology to use. Next slide. So how are we doing this? Next slide. We're identifying our top corridors. The maps are very similar in nature. Looking at them with the on the way being identified with how we can with our Avenue, Martin Luther King, Dale Mabry Highway, US 41, US 301, and US 92. As you can see, these are all the major roads that everybody's traveling through and on. We have our network and the county has theirs in the city as well. So, and they overlap 25 out of the 36. It's fine, Lisa. Thank you. You can go to the next one. Next slide. 25 of the 36 overlap with the TPO's high segment overlapping with the FDOT's severe injury priority corridors. And this is important to know because with these overlaps, we can try and work with our, local partners, the county and the city, to see what improvements we can do through the new FDOT design manual, chapter 114, ensuring safety improvements included are in our 3R projects, which are the resurfacing, restoration, and rehabilitation, upgrade the pedestrian and bicycle facilities, add lighting where we can at the crossings. Our safety needs are in line with the safe systems approach and fill in these gaps for these vulnerable road users wherever possible. And I know not only are we doing it, but everybody else is trying to do it. And this is really important when you're working with your local partners. Next slide. Again, as you can see, there's an overlap between the agencies, the city, the county and the state and the states. They all overlap each other in and around. So I know you've been talking about it with each other, the different entities in the room and how we can all work together to do this. No one group can do it single-handedly, so these partnerships are key. Next slide. So the overlap between the TPO's high injury network and ours is important also because the high visibility enforcement with law enforcement is important because they get their grants and they go out there and they do their enforcement, but really it's more education. They're out there educating our pedestrians and our bicyclists and when they can, our motorists and letting them know what they need to do for proper behavior. And again, you see the overlap on the maps. Next slide. So here you have the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Why is this important? Because roads and bridges got 110 billion. The electric grid upgrade was 73 billion. Improved for passenger and freight and rail, 66 billion. Public transit was 39 billion. Hopefully, we can get the electric vehicles up and running with 15 billion. Reconnecting communities was 1 billion. And most important to us was the safety with 11 billion. That's a lot of money that can be used for good. Next slide. So how is US DOT National Road Safety Strategy working? Well, safe people, encourage safe, responsible behavior and create conditions that prioritize their ability to reach their destination unharmed. Safer roads, we want to design roadways to mitigate human mistakes and account for injury tolerances to encourage safer behaviors and to facilitate safe travel by most vulnerable road users. We want safer vehicles, expand availability of vehicle safe systems and features that help prevent crashes and minimize the impact of crashes on both occupants and non-occupants. We want safer speeds, promote safer speeds in all roadway environments through a combination of thoughtful, context-appropriate roadway design, targeted education, and outreach campaigns and enforcement. Post-crash care, enhance survivability of crashes through expedited access to emergency medical care while creating a safe working environment for vital first responders and preventing secondary crashes through robust traffic incident management practices. Unfortunately, this might be easier said than done in some instances. So how are we working on all of this? Well, we have wrong way driving that we have to get under control. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of wrong way driving incidences that have taken place and taken the lives of a lot of our first responders. We're working on that with countermeasures for arterial and collectors, and we're doing it via the FDM Chapter 230, improvements to FDM 114 and the Safe Systems approach into the 3R projects. We're targeting speeds. We're using the Complete Streets program. We're using Safe Strides to Zero program. We're also working on our safety needs, working with our local partners. We're doing enhanced mid-block pedestrian hybrid beacons, or the PHBs. We're looking into using mid-block pedestrian signals, or our MPSs. We're upgrading from the RRFBs. We're working with the Florida Safe Routes to School program and trying to enhance that program in our areas. We're using the Vital Few Safety Team initiatives and the Target Zero approach chart and partner enhancements that you see above. Next slide. We're also doing the leading ped intervals, or the LPIs. We're using LED intersection and corridor street lighting program, adding marked crosswalks at signalized intersection, high friction surface treatments, lane departure safety program, work zone safety program, which is really important. We got to get people to learn to slow down or move over. Evaluation of existing mid-block crosswalks with the RRFBs. Next slide. So we have a lot of programs out there. The Vision Zero, FDOT's Target Zero, Operation Vision Zero, driving down fatalities. So how do all of these programs work together? Next slide. The department has embraced a Target Zero philosophy, much like the City of Tampa's Vision Zero effort. This is well aligned with the city. Target Zero builds upon Vision Zero by focusing on influencing drivers' behavior to eliminate serious and fatal crashes. In addition, Target Zero aligns resources and establishes actions for all safety stakeholders to take evolutionary steps to improve how Florida connects, interacts, plans, designs, operates, and maintains its transportation system. District 7 partners with its stakeholders to include cities, counties, and law enforcement agencies, as well as the healthcare profession, to achieve an aspirational goal of one day reaching 0 deaths on our highways. According to the City of Tampa, they have 55 high injury network corridors. 14 of these are on our state highways. Currently, we have several ongoing projects to include complete street and safety improvements for these corridors. Several include Fowler Avenue, Bush Boulevard, Kennedy Boulevard, Courtney Campbell Causeway, Tampa Street, and Florida Avenue and Seminole Heights. So as you can see, it's not just one DOT, it's DOT with the city, the county, and all of our other agencies trying to work together to get to 0. Next slide. In Hillsborough County alone, we have 144 locations where we have put in the leading ped intervals. Sorry. In the state of Florida, we have 556 signalized intersections, 2/3 of the LPIs in Florida. What are our problems or difficulties so far? Well, we have some challenges. We have old or incompatible signal equipment, shortages of experience and manpower to get them in. And we want you to know that we are doing data collection for this, and it's ongoing. And how are we doing it? We're also doing district-wide lighting retrofits. We have an ongoing 5-year work program, design, build, low bid, push button program. We're working with local agencies through the LAP or JPA and utility permits. We're working with TECO to expedite lighting projects throughout. We're also working with marked crosswalks on pedestrian safety. We're looking into systematically adding crosswalks where there's missing legs so that all the approaches are safe. Crossing for the pedestrians who intend to cross at one leg only. We're preparing feasibility studies on these crosswalks for a total of 319 locations. And we've been doing this throughout our district. Next slide.
Ms. Ginger, how many more slides do you have?
I have just 2.
Okay.
I'm working fast. I'm talking fast. So you can go to the next slide. We're working with PSAs. We're doing PSAs. We've done the move over PSA, wrong way driving PSAs. We're working on geofencing, which is really having a lot of input for that, for our safety messaging that's going out. And you can go to the next slide. We're working with our law enforcement officers because they are the ones that are boots on the ground and seeing the issues daily and getting the information out. And I'll go to the next slide. And if you have any questions, you can let me know.
I thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. Any comments or any questions? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Simmons, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Good morning, everyone.
Ms. Simmons, we really want to hear what you have to say, but we've got about 15 minutes left and we got one more person after you.
Okay, so what I will do is I'm going to take a look, hang on here, and I will go as quickly as I can through these and hit the key slides here. Okay. Okay. How's that?
Please don't see.
Okay. Okay, can you see my screen?
How about I do it for you?
Okay, thank you.
You're still not saying anything.
I'm making it self-presenter so that I can.
Okay. Yeah, it didn't pop up.
There you go.
We will do that. All right, so. Okay. All right, so this is the preliminary draft of the UPWP, and historically it is done every 2 years. Our year runs from July 1st to June 30th. Next slide. For our budget, this is one of the important slides. Our PL and FTA funds are combined, and they're going to be treated as if they're all PL funds. These slides do not yet include the deobligated amounts, but they will be included in the final UPWP. In comparison to other UPWPs, there's approximately $1.4 million more in combined PL and FTA over 2 years, and about $178,000 more in SU funds. Next slide, please.
Okay, Jason, if you can improve the audio quality of Amber, that'd be awesome.
Okay, listed are the 6 tasks that you are familiar with. And new this year, there is a regional task 7, which is dedicated to projects that require funds transferred between MPOs and require an agreement to do so. Next slide, please. So what you see here are the project summaries of the tasks that we completed over fiscal year 21-22. And task 2 focuses on system and corridor planning. Next slide. And task 3 focuses on data monitoring in the long-range transportation plan. Task 4 is on the transportation improvement plan. Next slide. Our task 5 is a public participation. And lastly, our task 6 was formerly all our regional coordination projects. And now we'll take a look at our DBE. We're pleased to report that our current disadvantaged business enterprise, or DBE as it's commonly referred to, is at 14.5%. Next slide. So here's where we are in the process. This slide gives you the overview. Right now we are going through committees in April, and it will be taken for final approval and adoption in May. Next slide, please. So this slide represents a list of all the new project requests that we've had in the UPWP. You can see here we had some from HART, some from the city of Tampa, and then what we'll do is move on to our critical path projects. Next, there we go. The next few slides will highlight the TPO recommended projects, critical path projects, projects that began in fiscal year 22 and will continue in 23, optional recommended projects, and recommended projects that will require additional alternative funding. Critical path projects are either previously approved that will commence in 2023 or are needed as part of maintaining our compliance with federal and state rules. Moving on. These critical path projects represent about $1.2 million. Next slide. These are our other recommended projects list with an estimated cost of approximately $1 million. They include the Plant City Master Planning, Temple Terrace Multimodal Districts, completion of a HART bus stop inventory, Transit Development Plan, road safety assessments, resiliency ROI evaluation, metropolitan priorities for state rail planning, and additional data collection of multimodal counts, health data, etc. Next slide. These are our other recommended projects that are actually contingent upon additional funding. That what you see here, we've not only put estimates when we had them of the cost of the project, but also some potential recommended funding. Next slide. And these are our fiscal year 22 projects that are in progress and will conclude in fiscal year 23. Next slide. As it's a coordinated planning process and the intent of the UPWP is to assist with documenting coordination, this is FDOT's federally funded planning projects. And we will go on to the next slide, please. And HARTs are forthcoming and will be dedicated to our Appendix H once they are received. Next slide. And that is our speed version of the preliminary UPWP. Any questions or comments?
I appreciate it. Any comments or questions? So thank you very much for your presentation.
No problem.
Ms. Torres, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Ms. Torres, we have about 7.5 minutes.
I have a suggestion, and you can hear and see me, can't you?
Yes, we can. And I think I know what your suggestion is going to be. Please go ahead and present it.
The slides that I put together for this are really self-explanatory. We were just going to let everyone know about 6 studies that the TPO team have kicked off. Really exciting projects we're working on. But honestly, I will be happy to go through these, but and let you know. But the slides also have who's going to be. Thank you for pulling it up. I'm in New York City. Look at my little apartment for the week. Anyway, I guess we can go through them if you'd like to. I have no problem doing that.
Like I said, we have about 7 minutes, so whatever you feel comfortable with.
Oh, how about I just jump through it quickly, and who's ever running the screens, just keep on clicking as I talk. So we are doing a health impact assessment of the 2045 LRTP. Health is a huge planning focus area. We want to improve the outcomes, in our studies. So when we did the LRTP in 2045, we really didn't know exactly how that would affect health. And we're talking about the risk to chronic disease and heart disease. So we are going to do an assessment of the complete streets and look and see how those projects that we're going to do and the treatments we'd have on those 350 miles would impact our community's health. Next. So that's no, you can keep going. Just keep clicking because I'm going to, when you get to that, if you stop at Joshua, that study is expected to finish up in September, and you can reach Joshua if you have some more questions on that. It's way more interesting than what I'm telling you briefly. So the next study is the freight supply chain resilience. And we kind of want to get an idea about how things now move through our system and around our county and how they would be impacted and how we could keep making sure that those commodities like medical water supply and energy and pharmaceuticals will be able to still reach their destinations if we were to be faced with a disaster scenario of some kind. So that study, we'll be communicating closely with those freight providers or those commodity providers. That'll finish up this summer. All of these 6 studies will be coming back to you for action as they get further along. Allison Ye is the point of contact for that study. We're also updating, and thank you for keeping along, who's ever doing that, data sharing platform enhancements, and we're working on that with the county. We just want to have some better crash and travel time forecasting in our data platform, and this will just help make decisions on prioritizing projects. You can keep clicking, by the way. The team, there's already some modeling in our data platform, but this will help get some better data on reliability of our roadways and safety. So the ITS committee is going to have a more intense presentation on that in July. So if that sparked your interest, tune into the ITS committee in July and you'll get a full presentation on that one. The next study, Lisa is the project manager for, is the Tampa School Transportation Safety Study. We had a study in 2018 that looked, at 12 schools were actually identified. This one kind of reprioritizes and identifies a few more that we're looking to make sure that there's, safe access to the schools and what physical improvements are needed, but also what kind of encouragement can we work with the parents in the schools to make it safer to move around and encourage healthier traveling to school. I'm sorry, Lisa, that's all I'm going to say about that one. The last 2 are the Plant City Canal Trail Study, and we haven't really looked closely in a while at Plant City's trails, although we do know that there aren't that many, and there are lots of destinations now and in the future that we want to connect to by trail. So that one has kicked off as well, kind of rule out barriers and come up with 3 alternative routes and see which one, makes the cut. And Wade, you can reach Wade for that study. The last one, we're collaborating with Hillsborough County on a countywide bicycle network evaluation. And it's kind of been a while since we've looked countywide at, how to prioritize where would we might need those bike facilities the most and what type of facility makes people most comfortable in. And so right now we're in a data analysis collection stage. So again, you're going to hear all about these studies later on when there's more to say. But if you are interested, you can talk to Wade or Abigail Flores from the county on what they're thinking of doing. And there's all sorts of outreach and surveys you should pay attention to. We'll probably be sending those out in all sorts of ways. So if there's a survey that comes along, your computer, please let us know and weigh in on some of these projects. How was that? Fast?
Beautiful. Thank you. Any comments or any questions? Ms. Torres, enjoy your time in New York City.
Thank you.
Do we have any old business, any new business?
Yes. very important. We've had some concerns and some issues arise around sunshine regarding our committees. So I'm here to remind you of your important role and to let you know that that also includes emailing. You can't email between, so you can't reply all when I send you something. If you have communications, direct them to me. If it's appropriate, then I'll make the announcement to the committee. But ideally, we receive it in advance of this meeting, so I can include it in the packet so that it's available for the entire public to review, just like all of our agenda items. So you're being reminded about that because that's social media posts, et cetera, about topics that we're going to be taking action on, any likes and stuff. Please be aware you're a public member of this committee. That can be perceived as the legal two-way communication. That was it. Okay. And then I forgo a presentation on the Live, Grow, Thrive Tampa Comprehensive Plan Update because you're all big people and you know to go click on, you have this survey all over the internet. Please go provide your comments so that we have it reflected in the important City of Tampa Comprehensive Plan updates. That's it.
Arizona.
Two things. New deal Parkway and they said the consent from New Deal on top to provide 53.
15. Did you go what?
Speed limit.
There's too many kids all over the college. And it's lots of things again.
Okay.
And we need to add a plan to Tampa Bay and left turn off a farm onto Tampa Bay. But anyway, that light, you can't get to it.
Agree with you.
Okay. And
So left turn right at Paul and Jam Street.
I'll communicate it to our city member that I'll let everyone know that what I find is most effective is you go to the public works sections of each of the jurisdictions and submit a customer service inquiry that provides a little tracking. So if you know anybody else, the more they submit, the more the city pays attention. Just a tip. But I will submit this on your behalf. Okay.
Without objection?
Very
Yes,
quickly,
Mrs.
I just want to throw out, May 1st starts National Bike Month. May 4th is National Bike to School Day. So get out there and take your kids biking to school and support the kids who are going to be on the road next week.
Do you have schools in mind where you're going to be?
I have a list, yes.
Okay.
If you want to know what they are, please feel free to contact me and join us.
Roosevelt, McFarland.
The different ones.
It's scattered throughout the county and I'd be happy to share it with anybody.
Those are mine too. All right, without objection, we're adjourned.
This was me skipping two presentations.
Good job, Lisa, rolling through the punches.